The topic we will be discussing today is a fascinating one, an interesting one, and a topic that is very relevant, especially that we are standing at the gate of a new year. And in Eretz Yisrael, it is a Shemitah year. I am fully aware that many of you listening to this shir don't live in Eretz Yisrael, but our minds and hearts and neshamas are always in Eretz Yisrael, and some places in the world we also consume fruit from Eretz Yisrael. And this is a very relevant topic regarding Shnas HaShemitah, but not only Shnas HaShemitah, but also other questions of Tumas HaMaises. It also has implications in other fields in halacha. When we have sfeikis in mitzvot atluiyos בארץ, the Rambam writes very clearly at the end of the first perek in Hilchas Trumas, perek Aleph halacha Chavov. Atruma b'zman hazeh afilu b'mokum shechziko el habovel eina min haTorah elu midivrayim. The opinion of the Rambam is that Trumas HaMases b'zman hazeh is only midrabanan, because the pasuk says ki tova'u. Ki tova'u means b'zman shekol Yisrael b'yeretz Yisrael. So Truma b'zman hazeh is not min haTorah, only derabanan. And the great commentaries of the Rambam debate which pasuk does the Rambam mean. Does it mean the first pasuk in this week's parsha? It deals with Bikurim, not with Truma. However, Bikurim and Truma have a similarity in very many basic halachas. But the lashon of the Rambam is ki sova'u, not ki sovo. Ki sova'u is found twice in Torah Hashem. Chumash v'Yikro Parshas Bahar, referring to Shemitah. Parsha Shoftim, referring to Din Melech b'Yisrael. When you will come to the land of Israel and you will say, Osimu alay Melech kechol hagoyim. Both these psukim do not deal with Truma. The Chazon Ish argues that the kavanah of the Rambam is to the posuk in Parsha Shlach, referring to Chala. Bevo'achem. Bevo'achem elo oretz asher ani mevi eschem shamo. This posuk deals with Chala, and Chala and Tzuma Gedola are the same din. What is problematic is today we have very precise and exact publications of the Rambam, whether it's Shapsa Frenkel or other different hoitzois, and in all of them the Rambam writes ki sava'u and not bevoach. Yihiyeh hamakor asher yihiyeh, regardless of which pasuk the Rambam refers to. The Rambam makes his opinion very clear that Truma b'zman hazeh derabanan, and that is a rule defining all the mitzvahs of Eretz Yisrael, all the mitzvahs atluiyos בארץ. And for many decades, in the big controversy regarding the heter mechira of Eretz Yisrael and Shnas HaShemitah, one of the most basic points of argumentation is how do we deal with sfeikis in Shemitah, Tumas HaMaises b'zman hazeh? Is it a suffix derabanan v'lekula, or bearing in mind that it's a derabanan sheyesh lo ikar min haTorah sfeikoi lechumer? So those gedolim that supported the heter mechira, one of the basic foundations of the heter was we're dealing with the derabanan sfeikoi lekula. The Chazon Ish maintains very strongly suffix derabanan sheyesh lo ikar min haTorah lechumer. So the first part of today's shir, this is the topic we will be discussing. We find two different taisus in Masechet Eruvin maintaining that Sveikis in Tumas HaMaises, even though they're Rabbanon, because the Iker mitzvah is the Uraisa, have a din of the Uraisa. Element of Lamed Beis, we deal with the sugya chazaka shliach oise shlichusay. When a person makes a shliach, and the shliach didn't come back and say, yes, I fulfilled my mission, we could assume that he did. That is a chazaka shliach oise shlichusay. And the Gemara, we find that we don't rely on this chazaka only by matters that are bonon, but by the Uraisas we cannot rely on this chazaka. Let me just give you a short introduction regarding chazaka shliach oise shlichusay. Throughout the Shas, we find dozens, literally dozens of chazakas that are based on the infinite wisdom and understanding of Chazal in behavioral patterns of people. Chazal are korveya, patterns of behavior. And Chazal teaches that we could rely on a basic assumption. Probably, in our case, people acted in a customary way, as we would expect them to act and interact. Ish ve'isha shaba'u, and they conduct their personal affairs like a husband and wife. That is a chazaka. Soiklin ala chazakas. Huchzike nida b'shchena seyo. Chazaka einodam porea toch zmanoi. Generally, when a borrower says, I paid my loan, we believe him. And the lender has to prove, he has to present a shtar. Otherwise, he cannot collect his money. However, if the borrower says, Parati b'toich hazman, we say no. Chazaka einodam porea toch zmanoi. And this chazaka is powerful enough, it goes against the cheskes moment, and we're moitzi moment based on this chazaka. And there are many, many similar chazakas. Not a chazaka de mikora or a chazaka de hashra, but rather assumptions, which Chazal are koiveya based on their understanding in behavioral patterns. Chazaka einodem toveena ken yeshla. Chazaka einodem shoyse b'kaseilom ken bodkei. Chazaka einodem toreach b'seuda umavsida. As a general rule, in the huge sugya of sveikas and the way we deal with sveikas, there are very fixed rules. Ruba b'chazaka, ruba odef. Nechlo korah v'shmur. Holchem bo momen acharov, ein holchem bo momen acharov. However, this family of chazakas, behavioral patterns, lav b'choda machta machtinen lo. And each and every one of these chazakas is essentially a rule in itself. Sometimes these chazakas are so convincing and overpowering and powerful, soikla mala chazakas, they're sufficient to deal with din nefashos. Ein odem parei torich zmanoi overrides cheskes moment. However, this specific chazaka, shliach oise shlichusai, is a weak chazaka. And therefore it goes lechomra and not lekula. Lekula only by the Rabbanan, not by the Urais. So Tosfos writes, and this is a big chiddush Erev and Lamed Beis Amud Aleph, regarding Tumas Peiros, even though the opinion of Tosfos that Tumas Peiros, the opinion of Tosfos Tumas Peiros are only the Rabbanan, because Tosfos maintains that Tumas Amasas, the Urais, are only Tirish v'Yitzor, only Zeisim v'Anovim, olives and grapes, other peiros of the Rabbanan. But nevertheless, we do not rely on any truma and chazaka shliach shlichusa because it's ikar manatay. So this is one source in which Tosfos maintains that Rabbanan sheyesh lo ikar manatayra has the din of a diurais. Once again, the Lamed Zayin Amud Beis regarding a different sugi, but diurais ein breira, but the Rabbanan yesh breira. Tosfos says even trumas yerek. Trumas yerek, vegetables, lekuri, alma is only the Rabbanan, and nevertheless, ein breira, ikroi minatoy. However, both of these sources do not deal with the more relevant question that we are dealing with tonight regarding the rules. In this halacha, how do we deal with the Rabbanan sheyesh lo ikar manatay? maybe we could learn this halacha from Tosfos, yet by Tumas Yerek, Ein Bereira. Because there's a big machlokes. What is the rationale to maintain b'diurais Ein Bereira b'derabon Yesh Bereira? The Ran in Gittin Daf Chof Hey says Yesh Bereira Ein Bereira is a machlokes in the Gemara, a machlokes that was not decided, and therefore it's a suffix. Sveke diurais lachumra, sveke derabon lakula. That is also the understanding of the Shagas Ayin Simon Tzaddik. According to this understanding, if Tosfos writes that Rabbanu Shesh Lo Wikam and Torah Tumas Yerek Ein Bereira, that is because Sveikoi L'Chumra. However, the Marshal Yamshe Shloima Baba Kama Perekei Siman Lamed Beis, also the Chazon Ish in Hilchois Demai Siman Tet Os Chof Aleph, they maintain has nothing to do with Sveikei Derabon Lakula, Sveikei Diurais L'Chumra, but rather that is at Konas Chacham. Chorma Mataka, that by the Rabbanans we rely on Breira, and according to this understanding, we cannot prove anything from the above mentioned Tosfos and Erev and Daf Lamed Zayin regarding the question Sveika L'Kumra, L'Kula or L'Chumra, the Rabbanan Sheyesh Lo Wikam and Torah Mitzvot Atluis Baretz B'Zman Hazeh. This is a matter of argumentation for 1,000 years. So nobody should expect me tonight to decide on this matter. But there is always special significance on the opinions of the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, because they are Amudei HaHiro Elakol Beis Yisrael. So Yoredei Shin Amedalav Sifra Amedalav, the Mechaber writes, we cannot rely on Chazok HaShliach Chodesh Shluchusa V'Troma B'Zman Hazeh, because by the Uraisa this Chazokah is not valid. Even though the Mechaber maintains in that same simon, Yoredei Shil Amedalav Siv Beis Truma B'Zman Hazeh Rabbanon. So obviously the Shulchan Aruch is based on Tosfos, the Rabbanon Sheyesh Lo Wikam and Torah, Dinoi Ki Uraisa. The Ramah Lamed Daled Sif Lamed Daled brings Yesh Umrim Sheker Somchim Al Chazok HaShliach HaShlichos B'Zman Hazeh, but that is not because he maintains as the Rabbanon, but rather the Ramah brings Yesh Umrim that we rely on this Chazokah even regarding a Sofek Diurais. Well, maybe the Ramah should toss it, because in Siv Beis, when the Mechaber writes Truma B'Zman Hazeh Rabbanon, the Ramah writes Yesh Umrim Shetruma B'Zman Hazeh Min Torah. That is the opinion of the Ravid, Perek Aleph Chav Vav Hilchos Tumas. But the Ramah writes there on the spot in Siv Beis that our minig is to rely on the opinion that it's the Rabbanon. So it's not reasonable that the Ramah Sif Lamed Daled is based on the Ramah Siv Beis, when in Siv Beis he writes that is not our minig. Nevertheless, in Sif Lamed Daled the Mechaber and the Ramah both agree Truma B'Zman Hazeh is a din of the Uraisa, even though Truma B'Zman Hazeh the Rabbanon, because the Rabbanon Sheyesh Lo Wikam and Torah Dinoi Ki Uraisa. However, the Mechaber does not deal with the question of Sofek Derabbanon L'Kula, Sveike Diuraisa L'Chumra. How do we deal with a Derabbanon Sheyesh Lo Wikam and Torah? Tshuvas Maharashdam Chelek Tshuvas Marsham Chelek Aleph Siman Ayin Beis quotes the Mishnah Melech, and that is a very famous Mishnah Melech which appears twice. Perek Yud Halacha Yud Zayin Hilchos Tumas, Hilchos Bechores, Perek Daled Halacha Aleph. In these two sources, the Mishnah Melech makes his opinion clear that Rabbanon Sheyesh Lo Wikam and Torah Dinoi Ki Uraisa Lagabe Kol Din Torah, even Lagabe Sveikus. And the Marsham was well known as a great makel, but he rules in accordance to the Mishnah Melech. Chelek Aleph Siman Ayin Beis, dealing with an interesting question. Esrogim were sent from Israel to Chutz La'aretz, and in each crate there was a certificate testifying that Hufesh Trumas Amaises Kedin. One box had no certificate, and it was a suffix. Could we rely on probably the one Mafesh Trumas Amaises? Maybe the paper just got lost, or maybe no. And when we have a Esrogim Sofek Hufesh Trumas Amaises, it's a big, big problem. because you cannot be mafresh minei bay. If you're mafresh minei bay, then it's not lochem. Part of the eslig belongs to Shevet Levi. It's not lochem. If you're mafresh from one eslig on the other, how would you know? Might be menaptur alachiv. So in Israel, it's not a problem. You pluck an esrog off the tree, it's tevel vadai, and you're mafresh on whatever is tevel in the box. But in Chutz La'aretz, not always is that eslig of tevel vadai available. So the Marsham deals with this question, and at the outset of the tshuva he writes, "L'chayra we could be makel because it's a sufik b'trei derabanan, truma b'zman hazeh derabanan, truma speiras derabanan, trei derabanan. If we have a sufik, why not say sveiket derabanan l'kula?" However, the Marsham says no, but the Mishnah Melech says sveiket derabanan sheyesh lo wikem l'torah l'chumra. So the Marsham is choishish to the Mishnah Melech. On the other hand, the Maharashdam, one of the greatest poskim, one of the greatest halachic authorities 500 years ago, Yoredei Makuf Tzadik Beis, is very explicit, and he writes that Sofik Turma Bisman Hazeh, Sveiket Rabbanan L'Kula, in Minchas Osher and Shvius, printed 7 years ago. A new edition should be expected every day. I planned and hoped it'll be in the market a month ago, but didn't happen yet. I am too overwhelmed and overburdened with a million things. Baruch Hashem, all good things, but anyway, the Sefer should be out in a short time. And as a Yud Aleph, in the previous edition, I brought many sources, including the Bach and the Shach, the great halachic rulers, that state very clearly, Sofek mitzvah atluis baratz v'zman says that Rabbanan sveiket Rabbanan l'kula, in accordance to the opinion of the Maharashdam. Zdei chemet chelek hey, os tof, truma, Simachov Gimel brings many sources that are mekel, other sources that are machim. So this is a question that was not decided. And it is one of the basic points in the argumentation regarding the Heter Mechila. The Chazon Ish is adamant. One should be machmer b'sveikis in shmita or in trumis b'zman hazeh because sofi damon she'esher k'mentoy l'chumer. However, in Minchas Osher I brought two other sources in which the Chazon Ish himself is lenient and is mekel because he deals with these questions as sveiket d'Rabbanan. So this is a major discussion in halacha. The Rabbanan sheyesh lo ikar min haTorah. Do we judge it as any other Rabbanan sveiket Rabbanan l'kula or sveiket l'chum? It is very well known that the Talmidim of the Chazon Ish and many others in the Litvish world are very, very machman afroshas tumas amaisis, and whenever they come, wherever they are, they are mafresh tumas amaisis, and they do not rely on others that probably did the afrosh already. And that is based on a very short paragraph in Chazon Ish Maisis. Siman Zayin, Ot Tet Zayin. The Chazon Ish writes 5 different reasons why one should be machmer and sveikis and tumas amaisis. The first is, as I mentioned at the beginning of the Shir, it is true, tumas amaisis was zman hazeh according to the Rambam and Shechnocha the Rabbanan, but the Rabbanan sheyesh lo ikar min haTorah l'chumra. This principle is relevant to Shemitah as well. The other 4 reasons are not relevant by Shemitah. Number 1, Cheskes Isar. The opinion of the Shach. A few places in Yoredei is Sveiket Rabbanan sheyesh lo Cheskes Isar l'chumra. Dovo sheyesh lo matirin l'chumra. If we could be mevarer or metaken bekal l'chumra. And the last argument is an interesting one, and the Chazon Ish himself is Noite lakan ulachan. He doesn't have a clear opinion. Gzeres demai. Chachamim or metaken, we do not rely on Rav Amoritz Masrim. So on one hand, if we don't rely on Rav, we definitely should be machmir b'sveikis. But maybe Gzeres demai was limited in its scope and its essence. And maybe ein loy ela chidusha. It is only that we don't rely on an Amoritz that probably he was mafresh demai, but it is not across the board. we do not say that we always should be machmer by sveikis and tumas amaises because of gzeiras d'mayim. So basically, we just presented the dilemma and brought various sources, lakan in this big machlokes. Sveikot b'mitzvot התלויות בארץ, according to most poskim. Bisman hazeh d'Rabbanan, but originally we're dealing with the diuraisa, sveika l'kul and sveika l'chol. I would like to define the essence of the basic concept that Rabbanan sheyesh lo ikar min haTorah, because I think there are 4 different categories under this caption, that Rabbanan sheyesh lo ikar min haTorah. We find this in 4 different situations. Those that have a keen sense of hearing should have been aware. Then in the sources I quoted in the past 20 minutes, there are 2 different types of the Rabbanan sheyesh lo ikar min haTorah. We started off with 2 Tosfosim, Erev and Lamed Beis Amud Aleph, Lamed Zayin Amud Beis. Tosfos deals with Trimis Peres d'Rabbanan, Trimis Yerek d'Rabbanan, and Tosfos writes it's ikar min haTorah, and therefore one should go lechumra. Regarding Chazukah Shliach Oisa Shlichusa on one hand, Ein Breira on the other hand, this is one form of the Rabbanan sheyesh lo ikar min haTorah. Truma is a mitzvah diuraisa, but only zeis and vanorim. We are dealing with extensions of the mitzvah. Chachamim included in the mitzvah Peres and Yerokes that are exempt min haTorah, but they are included in the Rabbanan, and that is the Rabbanan sheyesh lo ikar min haTorah. Most of the sources I quoted deal with another question. Mitzvahs tumas amaises that were min haTorah b'zman Beis Hamikdash, when all the Jews, or the majority of the people, were in the land of Israel. B'zman hazeh d'Rabbanan. That is a different type of the Rabbanan sheyesh lo ikar min haTorah. This very mitzvah was min haTorah once upon a time, in days of yore, in the times of glory of Klal Yisrael, when the entire nation was in the land of Israel with a shlos shchina with a Beis Hamikdash. Though this is a different type, a different form of the Rabbanan sheyesh lo ikar min haTorah. And they are not dependent on each other. On one hand, there is room to argue that one should be machmir more b'tumas amaises b'zman hazeh, because this very mitzvah was min haTorah 2,000 years ago, and therefore maybe as chumri yasera more than tumas pri or primis yerek that was never min haTorah. One could argue to the contrary. Pri v'yerek b'zman Beis Hamikdash, or according to the Ravid, the truma b'zman hazeh diuraisa. This very mitzvah of Rosh Tumas Amaises is diuraisa right here and now, and therefore maybe that is ample reason to be machmir even Tumas Pri and Tumas Yerek that are the Rabbanan. Especially, one could argue, if we're going to be mekel in Tumas Peres and Tumas Yerukes, one might mistakenly be mekel by grapes and olives as well. So maybe that is more reason to be machmir. Benkach u penkach, we're dealing with 2 different categories. The Rabbanan sheyesh lo ikar min haTorah kan v'achshav. The Rabbanan sheyesh lo ikar min haTorah, it was min haTorah many years ago, b'zman Beis Hamikdash. I want to bring another example to the category of Tumas Pri and Tumas Yerek. And this brings us to Hilchas Berachas Hamazon, Simareish Tes Shechon Ochar Chaim. Berachas Hamazon min haTorah. Berachas Hamazon is actually the only bracha that's min haTorah l'kuli alma. All the other brachas are the Rabbanan. Even Berachas HaTorah is a machlokes. The only bracha that everybody agrees is min haTorah is Berachas Hamazon. Mikra mola dibra kosav yochaltu v'savato uve'orachtu es Hashem Elokech. However, there's a machlokes that show him what is min haTorah. First bracha, first 3 brachas. Bracha number 4 is agreed upon that it's only midrabanan. Safek Berachas Hamazon, Safek lo berach sveika diuraisa lechumra. Choizer Mavorach. Does he have to say the fourth bracha as well? Or would we say no? Bracha number 4 is only Midarabonon, and therefore Sufik Darbonon Lakula. And if he is in doubt whether he said Berachas Hamazon or not, he has to go over the first 3, but not number 4. That is a big discussion in the poskim, and that is the type of the Rabbanon Shesh Lokim and Torah, like Tumas Pi and Tumas Yerek. It's an extension of the Urais. Fourth bracha is included in Berachas Hamazon. Berachas Hamazon basically is the Uraisa, but this bracha was never the Uraisa. It is the Rabbanon. So the Netzev in his magnificent Sefer Hamek Shal and Sheiltas Sheulta Kuf Mem Vav proves from the Sheiltas. In Suffolk, he just has to say first 3 brachas and not number 4. However, the Shoel HaMeishiv Madura Tinyona Cheleg Gimel Simakuf Zayin proves from a different source of the Sheiltas and Parshas Tzav that he has to say bracha number 4 as well. Because we're not dealing today with Hilchas Berachas Hamazon, I just bring the sources and we're not going to elaborate on this detail or another. Category number 3, the Rabbanon Sheyesh L'Wikim and Torah, is a big chiddush we find. Lemiyat Zichraini. With my poor memory, I think it's only once in Shas, about the Zorachov Beis Aleph and Taisus. There's a major discussion in all the Rishonim regarding Malachas Chalamoid, is the Rosh Min HaTorah or Midrabanan. We won't get into this because it's a suga we could deal with 2 weeks. Basic source, Chagigi Yud Ches Amud Aleph, and Moed Koten Beis Amud Beis. Taisus writes about the Zorachov Beis Amud Aleph, Malachas Chalamoid Rabbanan. But nevertheless, we're machmer by Malachas Chalamoid because Yesh Lo Ikam and HaTorah, Ikal Migzar Otu Yom Tov. Because it's a Gzeira Mishim Yom Tov, it's Ikam and HaTorah. Tremendous chiddush. Different than the first 2 categories that we spoke about before. Why is it such a tremendous chiddush? Because all the Isurim D'Rabbanan are Gzeira to the Urais. There's no other concept of an Isur D'Rabbanan. Many occasions I made it clear, Kol Divrei Seifrim are included in 3 categories. Gezeiras, Mitzvahs, Tekonos. All the Sheval Taises, the Gezeiras, are all Gzeira to the Urais. So when do we say Sveika D'Rabbanan L'Kul? When are we Mekel B'D'Rabbanan? If Taises says, Ikal Migzar Oti Yom Tov, and therefore Yesh Lo Ikam and HaTorah, that's why we're Machmer. So when are we Mekel? My feeling is that not by every Gzeira Oti the Urais, Taises would say Yesh Lo Ikam and HaTorah, maybe only in the relationship between Chalamoid and Yom Tov, because Chalamoid in a way is Yom Tov, it's included in the same Shem. After all, it's Moyed. Choyloi Shem Moyed, but it's still Moyed. Maybe only in that case it would be defined as Yesh Lo Ikam and HaTorah. Category number 4 is a very interesting sugi. Zveket Yuraisa Shenes Galgel Midrabanon. Oh, Gilgul. Where do we find Gilgul? In Choshe Mishpat and a few figures. Gilgul Shavua. Kiddushin Chavav. Nizgalgel by Kinyan Chotza. In Ebenezer we find Gilgul Nizgalgel by Get. In Hilchas Shabbos, first Perek of Bava Kama. In Kabbalah we all are familiar with Gilgul Neshamas. This is a new type of Gilgul in Isavet. The Uraisa Shenes Galgel D'Rabbanan. Sometimes I prefer, instead of trying to explain abstracts, I prefer just giving examples, and then everybody will understand what the concept means. Shach Yoredeya Kuf Yud Klolei Svek Sveika Os Yutes writes Sufik Isidi Uraisa, Sufik Orla, Sufik Chometz Bepesach, Bosa Bacholov, Nevela, any Sveika Uraisa. That's a bottle Barov. But it's not bottle because it's Dove Sheshamatir, Dove Choshev, Dove Shebeminyan, Chacheti, Chari, Eschabed, Isur Anoah, that aren't bottle as we learned in the last Mishnah Masechet Avodah Zarah. But all these halachas are only derabanan. So right here and now we're dealing with an derabanan because Manatayr is bottled berav. But originally it was a diuraisa. That is what the Shach calls Sveike diuraisa shen is galgale derabanan. It's a Sveike diuraisa, but it was transformed into a derabanan because something happened, because it's bottled berav Manatayr. Pischet Shuva on the spot, Os Yutes brings another example. Kli Shabola Sofek is a diuraisa. But the Kli is no longer a ben yoimoi. Ain't a ben yoimoi, noisen tam of gam is only in his derabanan. So in actuality, we're dealing with an issa derabanan. It cannot be an issa diuraisa because the Kli isn't a ben yoimoi. But originally, we're dealing with a sveika diuraisa. The Shach says lechumra. And this is also a major, major controversy. So this is a new category of derabanan sheyesh lo ikem anatay. Example number 3, dam shebishloi. We have a piece of meat. Sofek im nimlach or lo nimlach. Dam is an issa diuraisa, an issa koros. But the meat was cooked, and dam shebishloi is derabanan. Originally, sveike diuraisa. But it became a sofek derabanan. Dam shebishloi derabanan. Sveikes and bedikes chometz. We're dealing with an issa diuraisa bal yarov bal yamotza. But the Gemara says, "Psuchim davdalat mediuraisa bebitul ba'al mesagis." So after bitul chometz, it's only derabanan. These are 4 different examples of sveike diuraisa shenes galgel derabanan. So without going into great detail, most of the poskim are machmir, and we deal with these questions as sveike diuraisa lechumra. Some rishonim and poskim are made. This is category number 4. So in the very basic concept of sveike derabanan sheyesh lo ikar min haTorah, we developed 4 different categories. When the derabanan is an extension of the diuraisa, trumas pri, trumas yerek, brocha raviyas beberches hamazon. When the derabanan originally was a diuraisa, and it's derabanan b'zman hazeh, including all the mitzvot atluiyos ba'aretz, in the opinion of the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch. Sveike diuraisa shenes galgal derabanan. A suffix that actually was min haTorah, but by means of a halachic principle, it was transformed into a derabanan. And the big chiddush in Tosos of the Zorach of Beis, Ikala migzar otu diuraisa, by exera, that is considered yesh lo ikem min haTorah, and we try to be mitzamtzim that chiddush. Only when the gezera and mashenigzar ligabav are both of the same family, same hagdorah, same definition, like chalamoid in relationship to Yom Tov. So today we dealt with a very general concept, not a very local sugya, but a broad-based one. One of the great sveikes in halacha, how do we deal with the derabanan sheyesh lo ikem min haTorah? Having a source in the first posuk in this week's parsha, and it is a very relevant question, more so in Eretz Yisrael, but as was quite obvious in today's shiur, this has ramifications in many, many different areas of halacha. This week's parsha, we find a posuk that is extremely basic. When Moshe Rabbeinu speaks to the people, and in this week's parsha, we find very harsh words of Teichach. One of the 2 parshas of Teichach, Parshas Bechukos and Toras HaKoyanim, and Parshas Savai in Mishnah Torah. And we always read this parsha before Rosh Hashanah. And the Gemara Megillah says, Tich Lashona v'kira lo yisayo. But there's a different reason why we read this parsha before the Yom Neruah. We should heed and hear. Take to heart. Divrei Teichach. Do tshuva. Come back to a Kodesh Baruch. And Levi Yoimeli, I think that these 2 reasons are probably 2 sides of the same coin. Because if we really wish, if we really hope that Tich Lashona v'kira lo Tochel Shona v'berach we must do something about it. If we will listen carefully to what Moshe Rabbeinu has to say, to these harsh words of Teichacha, we will take to heart, we will do tshuva, we will listen to the Kol Shofar, then we really could hope. Tichla Shona v'kilul Yisrael, Tochel Shona v'berchosel. Moshe Rabbeinu speaks to the people and he says, Hayoim hazeh nihiyeiso la'am l'Shem Elokecha. It is this day that you have become a nation of a Kodesh Baruch. Which day? Which day is Moshe referring to when he says, Hayoim hazeh nihiyeiso la'am l'Shem Elokecha? And Rashi says, every day. Which day? Today. Or tomorrow. Or yesterday, or a day before yesterday, or a day after tomorrow. Every day. B'chol yoim v'yoim yihiyu beinecho kilo hayoim boso libris. Every day should be the day of your personal covenant. Every day is the day. B'chol yoim v'yoim yihiyu beinecho kechadash. Moshe is not dealing with one special day. Every day is the one special day. Many times I quote the line of the Piasets Rebbe. Very unusual in the world of Gedolei Yisrael, but we have some personal diary of the Piasets Rebbe. And he writes his feelings and emotions and thoughts between him and HaKadosh Baruch. And when I first read this, I cried. And I don't say this as a guzma. I literally cried because I was so moved and inspired. So the great Piasets Rebbe, Hashem Yinkum Doma, he was killed by the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, in the Holocaust. He was a giant. And he writes, Rabbeinu Shalom, I want to do something for you. I want to give you something. I want to come closer to you. What could I offer you? To learn Torah? I already learned Torah as much as I can. To daven, I always made a tremendous effort of kavanas atfila. I would like to be misgayer. I would like to be a convert. But what could I do? I was born Jewish. He is almost complaining. Why was I born Jewish? And I can't be again. The only act that would satisfy his yearning soul. Nafshoy haro'evo, nafshoy hashokeko, nafsho hatzme'a lekirvat elukim. The only act that would satisfy him would be Geras. But I'm a Jew. And as a Rav that has performed Geras many times, and I've seen the feelings of a Ger Tzedek or a Geras Tzedekis in that very special and overpowering moment in which the Ger takes upon himself the yoke of Yiddishkeit. It's always very moving. It's exhilarating. So the Piasets Rebbe says, I would like to convert, but I'm a Jew. And when I read that, then tears streamed down my face. I thought to myself, and who says a Jew can't convert? Maybe we could. What is Geras all about? Well, Mila, we can't do that. Baruch Hashem, our parents did it for us when we were 8 days old. Well, we could go to mikveh every day, but it's not exactly a tefillah of Geras. But what is the essence of Geras? Kabbalas mitzvahs. And a ger stands before Beis Din, and he doesn't have the option of being selective, of choosing. Because the Gemara says, and the Av Beis Din turns to the ger and says, do you accept Torah? And he says, yes. Do you accept the entirety of Torah? Are you aware that you need to take upon yourself Taryag mitzvahs, each and every one of them? And if he says no, then no, then we can't let you in. You need to take it all or nothing. It's a package deal. We as Jews, as from Jews, are extremely selective in our mitzvahs. We feel that we have the option because we were born Jews. Some people are very, very particular about the Tumas Amaisis. Not so in halachas of Lashon Hara, Mal b'pnei Chaveroi b'Rabbi. Some of them are very machmer in halachas Shabbos, but not necessarily in Dinei Oinoah and in business ethics. And on the other hand, there are some people that are outstanding in Bein Adam l'Chaveroi. People that are honest, people of integrity, that are fair, would never lie, but they have a tremendous deficiency in Yirah Shamayim. Look at their Tefillah and Kriyas Shema. There are all types amongst us, but most of us are quite selective, having those areas in which we excel and others in which we are far from being a paragon of excellence. A ger doesn't have that option. The ger has to take it all. So who says a Jew can't convert? Maybe we could. Probably we should. Ve'im lo yachshav ve'im esai. Now is the time. Chodesh Elul, when each and every one makes a cheshbon and nefesh, hayoim haras olam, everything starts anew. These are days of renewal. Days in which the entire creation renews itself. Hayoim haras olam. So this is the time to convert. Hayoim hazeh nehiyeh la'am laHashem Eloikech. So each and every day, twice a day, we say Perek Chav Zayin Tehillim L'Dovad Hashem Oirev Yishi. What is unique, what is special about this capital, more than all the others, 150 Perek Tehillim, that we say this Perek every day in Elul and in the Yom Tovim of Tishrei? Some say because of the Medrash at the beginning of the Perek, L'Dovad Hashem Oirev Rosh Hashanah V'Yishi B'Yom Kippurim. Some say because of the end of the Perek. That's what we find in Balaturim Parshas Nitzavim. Lulei amanti liros v'tov Hashem b'yeretz chaim lulei is oisi yiselu. But maybe it's two psukim in the middle of the Perek. David HaMelech says, Achash shualti mi'eis Hashem oisa avakish. Shivti b'veis Hashem kol yemei chayai la'achzois b'noyim Hashem u'levaker b'hecholah. Many years ago when I printed my first sefer, I wrote two comments on these psukim. Achashualti in the past, Oisa Avakesh in the future. Why does David go from the past to the future? Shifti b'veis Hashem kol yemei chayei. I should be a resident, a toishav keva, permanent residency. Ulevaker b'echola, and I should visit. A visitor is not a resident. A toishav is not a mevak. So what I wrote is this. It is part of human nature. Your dreams, your plans, your aspirations, your prayers develop from one stage in your life to another. What does a little boy dream about? He wants a big bicycle. And when he becomes a bocher, an adolescent, well, it depends where he is. If he's a good yeshiva boy, he dreams about being Gadol B'Yisrael. And then you get a bit older, and your dreams change, and you marry, you build a family, and you hope to make parnasa. At a certain stage, you just hope to get up every day without backache, without lumbago, without having a disc, and your knees should function properly, and that is human nature. A wise man once said, when do you get old? When you stop dreaming. As long as you dream, you're young. But our dreams change and develop, transform themselves from one period or one stage to another. Some people have very drastic changes in their own personal life. I don't think anybody had such dramatic changes in his life as David HaMelech. He was a shepherd, simple shepherd. What are the dreams of a shepherd? He just hopes to find a tree with some shade. And if he'll find a creek or some fresh water to drink, oh, that's a utopia. Shmuel HaNavi took David Memichla Isatzayin and appointed him to be Melech Yehuda Yerushalayim, the greatest king in the history of the Jews. What are the dreams of a king? Very different than those of a shepherd. But David HaMelech says, my dreams and aspirations are the same. Hashem in the past, till the end of my days, one and only dream, to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shifti b'veis Hashem kol yomei chayim. Lachzois b'noyam Hashem ulevaker b'heichalai. I should be a toishev. And every day, I should feel as if this is the day. This is my first day. Hayom hazeh nehiyes olam l'Shem Elokecha b'chol yom v'yom yeh v'lecha kilo hayom nichnasto lebris. That is the essence of David HaMelech's bakash. So when we come into the Beis Medrash and we open up a Gemara, we might have learned this sugya 500 times in the past. We should feel as if this is the first time we're actually learning this sugya. Every day when we get up in the morning and we say, Moidani lefunecha, melech chai v'kayom. When we say every day in the morning, Shelo Yasani Goy, we should feel this is the day in which we enter the covenant with the Kodesh Baruch. Hayom hazeh, b'chol yom v'yom yeh v'necha kilo hayom baso lebris with the Kodesh Baruch. We should feel this feeling of renewal every day. This feeling of kirvus Elokim, of closeness to HaKadosh Baruch. And in these beautiful and magnificent days of Chodesh Elul, Kodesh Baruch Hu b'mekabel barachmim mevarotzim, our cheshbon and nefesh, if that is all we have right now, our tefillas, nitzotzot hatshuva shemitnotzitzim b'libein, they should all be l'rachamim u'l'rotzim by HaKadosh Baruch. We should all be zoichet tshuva shalema, and we should all be zoichet together with Klal Yisrael to aksiva v'chasim tova b'sifron shel tzadikim gimel. Let this coming year be a year of simcha and nachas and brocha and shefa. Let this coming year be a shnas geula v'yeshua b'bias goel tzedek b'mheiro v'yomeinu amen.